Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session 18 of the Samena Knowledge Cafe. It's always a pleasure to meet with you, share good ideas, and know about innovations, research, and initiatives in different countries in South Asia, Middle East, and North Africa. This time, we have two very exciting presentations. They are both from a very dear country to our hearts. It's Bangladesh. And from Bangladesh, we have a civil society and we have an observatory KIX research. They are all coming together to give us some of the angles of the education systems of Bangladesh. Can you imagine? It's session number 18. We've been there for quite a while. We started in 2023, and now 3 years now, having it was bi-monthly, but now it's quarterly. And each time we have a wonderful contribution from the countries, the member countries in South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. If I may introduce today's session, the first session is going to be by Syed Ahmed. It's about from assessment to action. And action here is the buzzword. I mean, yes, we want to see action. We want to see people making a difference. Advancing foundational learning with IID. And IID, I would let Syed talk more about IID, but IID has been a civil society organization serving education sector in Bangladesh for many years, contributing to a lot of practical and evidence-based KIX research and to really making a difference. It's a role model, really. I always refer to IIED as the role model for civil society, how it contributes to education systems in our countries. So Syed Ahmad is the CEO, and he's the founder as well of the Institute for Informed Development, IID, in Bangladesh. And then it's going to be followed by another wonderful presentation by Koi. Mr. Koi Dang Ving is a research analyst from Mekong Development Research Institute. Its abbreviation as MDRI, and it's in Vietnam, but it has focused on work in Bangladesh. And the presentation from him today is going to be a snapshot of education resilience in Bangladesh about qualitative evidence on governance, intersectionality, and equity. So now I would start with a 10 to 15 minutes presentation first by Syed Ahmad, followed by Q&A, and then we would move on to the other presentation. So stay with us. We have a lot of exciting presentations and information today on Bangladesh. So I would now stop sharing and allow Syed Ahmad to share his own screen and let us enjoy the content he's going to provide. The floor is yours, Syed.
Thank you so much, Rasha. I hope I'm audible. And
yes,
you are very kind to introduce us the way you have. Today, we are going to share only one journey. So from assessment of learning to assessment for learning, what we do. So that's the only thing we are going to talk about today. So assessment of learning, by that we mean that, okay, whether children are learning or not, why it's important to know how we actually assess it and what really does it matter. And assessment for learning is that, okay, now that we know that children are learning or not, can we also do assessment so that they learn? So it's not like that, we are assessing whether they are learning or not, but also we are assessing that so that they are learning. The way we do it is the first question that we ask is the children may be in the school, but schooling doesn't mean learning. The same way, throughout the process we have learned, reading doesn't mean understanding. Even me talking doesn't mean communicating if I fail to communicate what I'm saying to you. If, what I'm saying, it doesn't make sense, then me presenting doesn't mean communicating. So from that perspective, we actually look at the children's study, and we also feel that when someone is learning, that must be visible. So what we do, that we measure the child, we communicate whether they are learning or not. After the measurement, we communicate, and then we take action. What are the actions that we take? And then we again reassess whether it worked or not. This is the story I'm going to share with you. The first that we do, this is one of the recent one that we have done, is that we assess the children whether they are learning or not. So this is a co-created. IID is also a member of the PAL network, People's Action Learning Network. And we co-created this. The whole idea of this assessment, we have been doing it for some time, that PAL network, is that we do nationwide assessment. It's a citizen-led, it's a household-based, and it's one-on-one. So which means if there is a dropout, we still assess them. If they are not going to different type of education system, we still assess them. So this time we assessed 275 citizens, went to 4,500 household, which the household were picked across the nation by the Bureau of Statistics. They gave us so that it becomes a representative sampling. And then we assessed around 6,500 children. What we assess, the tool itself that we use, what it does is that it assesses that reading and mathematics. But in reading, we mean that whether they can read a short text and retrieve the meaning, whether they understand or not. With mathematics, we see that whether they understand the whole number, the basic operations, and can use the numbers problem solving. All these are, for SDG 4.1.A, that measures the minimum proficiency level of reading and mathematics at the end of lower primary. And the UNESCO of Statistics, the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, UIS, they are the custodian, that they said that, okay, if you want to assess something within SDG indicator that shows that, okay, your data can be assessed to tell that whether, SDG has been achieved or not, then you will have to follow particular guideline. There is a global proficiency framework, there is a global benchmark we have to do. We have received a letter from the US saying that the tool that we use, the way we have implemented, we can say with our evidence that whether we have achieved SDG or not. So this tool achieved the foundational learning, assess the foundational learning, but it can also assess the SDG. Just one example that what did Bangladesh learn, what we have learned from this. We have realized that 3 in every 10 child who are 10-year-old, they reach the minimum proficiency in both reading and mathematics. So the SDG target was that everyone should, but we have realized that of the 10-year-old children, only 3 in 10 meet both the proficiency in reading and mathematics. 54% in case of math, 37% only in case of reading. And by grade 4, so we assessed it both on grade 4 and on grade 3. If anyone have a question at a later age, I can actually explain. I'm just looking at the clock. So that on the reporting on the grade 4 or on grade 10 to align with the SDG. But one of the interesting findings that we saw is more children can read. So if you give them a text, they can read. But if you ask them what they mean, for instance, if you ask a question that, okay, Mina was sad and was asking the brother to go and buy a chocolate. So the brother went to the shop. Now, if you ask why the brother went to the shop, they cannot say that. So this, but we even ask a simpler question that to understand whether you understand the meaning of it. So we have seen that because of the rote memorization experience, they sometimes can read, but they don't understand the meaning. But then we also think what we did. So we have this nationwide data and evidence, what we did. We say evidence has to travel, it must travel. So what we did is we did nationwide, national dialogue with the ministers and others. We went across the country to do local level consultation with the parents, teachers, students, that with the data that, hey, they are not learning, what you can do, what you can fix the local problem. I personally, I know that in last 2 months, at the time I visited in 17th district. So we are doing that. And the third approach was that our youth, they were also leading some community and youth action that now that the children are learning. We have a youth network across the country, Youth for Policy, we call it. IID is hosting it. So they were also using the data, and then they went to intervene. Okay, can a youth volunteer to solve it? Can they give time to the local people? So that's one approach that we took. Now, knowing that it is important that the children is learning a lot, but what happens next is most important. And this is where the shift happens, that we have been doing this I care. We said it tells you about the total population children are learning or not. But then we move to assessment for learning. What we do is that we have a simple tool that we call ASER. It was also originally developed, many of you know, by Pratham India. They now do the ASER India. IIT was also the host of ASER Bangladesh. You have ASER Pakistan, ASER Nepal. So the tool that we use, that it's like we go to a village, we assess all the children of that village who fall within that grade 3, within part, 3 to 5. And although the grade 5, you are supposed to know that in our previous, it shows that you are supposed to know that, okay, maybe they should know by 5 is grade 2, 3, or 4. Actually, they don't. So what we do is that with a simple tool that shows whether they understand the letter, word, paragraph, or a story, we assess them and categorize them, group them, because again, we have seen, you have these grade 4, 5 students, but grade 5 can only understand letter. There are grade 5 students who only build word reading. So there are grade 5 students who can, build fluency in paragraph only. There are grade 5 students who understand the story and comprehend the story. We regroup them, categorize them, and then we give them an intervention. So it's an after school 2-hour campaign that we do where we teach them after regrouping. So which means in one group, in a letter group or in a word group, there can be a student from grade 5, grade 2, or grade 1. Doesn't matter. We categorize them where they are. And this is one of the pictures. This is how it's happening. So they group them. So currently what we are doing, that we in 5 districts in 25 villages. This is just started. We are started with 1,300 students. And we, this is a cycle that we follow, that we assess with the ASER tool first. Then we group them by competency, whether they know, and then they learn at the right level, so which means wherever they are, we don't measure that whether in which group they're in the class they are. So it happens, we give the intervention for say 15 days, and after 15 days, then we reassess the whole group. And then we regroup. So sometimes it happens, there is a progression, which means someone who was in group in the letter, after 15 days, now they goes to probably the sentence group. So that's how they can move. And again, and then if you see the picture from the assessment, so that you find the child at the current level, then organize them at the competency level, and we level appropriate activities. So all the activities they do is level appropriate. So this whole initiative we call learning PAL. So the PAL, you're learning with the PAL. So because your classmate doesn't mean everyone you're on the same level. That's why sometimes they feel intimidated. Backbencher will not want to, talk to the teacher. Teacher doesn't have time. Here, they all know that we all know the same thing, that the real PAL, the learning, and then we reassess. The aim is continuous movement, not a one-time test. So we then again do it, then again do it. And once we do that, so this is what it is. So the two use of the assessment. One is evidence to action. So I care. It understands the gap. So it's a national level evidence. It communicates to the policymaker, local, have a local interpretation. And it also mobilize some sort of action with accountability and community response that are due to the school data. That is one assessment of learning. An assessment for learning the assessment tool that we use, individual child, we identify their level, we use the learning file, and then we reassess and adapt. So again, what we mean is that measure what children can actually do, and we make sure that their learning is visible and act where, from where the child is. Uh, you know, uh, Assessment should not only tell us, who is falling behind. Also, the class should not tell us, class grade 5 doesn't mean that we need to understand that someone is in grade 5. We need to understand what they are learning. Based on that, we give the action. These are the two things I wanted to share. I had few slides about the, maybe the operations, the detailed findings, but I didn't want to go. If there is any question, I will come back to it. Thank you so much.
I'm always impressed by the efficiency, Sayyid Ahmed. Yeah, being timely, finishing on time, and providing the right amount of information. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And I have been following the chat for messages, but I would like to hear from you. So if you're willing to, any of the audience, to open the microphone and ask a question or give a reflection or share maybe a similar experience, or maybe want to learn more, they're like about to implement foundational learning and assessment for learning. So maybe this is the time to talk to the experts. So let me just raise your hand if you want to participate in the discussion. Or maybe if you would like to, yeah, there is a message in the chat. Can I get certificate from the event? No, Cynthia, it's not a webinar or a formal workshop, so we do not give a certificate for this event of Knowledge Cafe. Mr. Bashir,
We have
our
some
dear
raised
friend.
hand.
Yes.
أهلا صباح الخير جميعا.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Rasha. Thank you so much for this invitation to participate to this session, the 18th session of the Knowledge Cafe. It is Bashir Mahmoudi, head of the UNESCO Ibn Khaldun.
For those who are willing to follow up in English, just go to the English channel, please. Thank you so much. Dr. Bashir, اتفضل.
Dr. Bashir Mahmoudi, head of UNESCO Club Ibn Khaldun, and the initiative of UNESCO for sustainable development in the Arab region. I have participated with you during a lot of initiative and the LC9 of NORAG. It was a pleasure to participate to that LC, to that learning cycle. Concerning the initiative of Bangladesh, I do agree that sometimes at 10 years old, it is very difficult for children to understand a small text. It is an international phenomenon, an international problem, knowing that the percentages might be different from a country to another. Maybe in Asia, 67% of the children that age are lacking that skill, and the international percentage is 75%. Of course, the assessment of the learning content or the diagnosis is very important, but the impact assessment is as well very important. The social impact should be assessed. How can we do that? And how shall we choose the texts? Are we talking about realistic texts that are reflecting the day-to-day life of the children, or other types of texts? Are they texts based on the daily context or daily life of the students, yes or no? And concerning the PISA program, the evaluation or assessment program of the OECD? Do you have any cooperation with that program? Are you choosing in a common way the standards of measurement? Are those assessments made in contribution or in cooperation with the PISA? And is Bangladesh participating to the PISA assessment? Did you have any experience with the PISA? How was it? How were the results? You have talked about students in grade 5, knowing that PISA is concentrate always on the mandatory teaching. In addition to that, based on your findings that led you to distribute children on the different groups, have you conducted a post-assessment for that experience or experiment? So have you conducted an assessment after the experiment, after dividing the students in group, and what was the result or the findings of that? Thank you so much for this very important presentation.
Dr. Bashir, thank you so much, Dr. Bashir, for this very deep kind of questions. And we will take also another question and comment from Koi, and then get back to Said Ahmed for the response. Please, Mr. Koi, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you so much for giving me the room. And thank you, Saeed, for the presentation. I think later when we go to mine, there's also a lot of similarities between our projects and the things that we want to do. And I really appreciate that. I think your organization work as a thread between what is going on the ground and at the policy level. I guess my question is at a more operational level, because throughout our research, one thing that we have been consistently finding is a difficulty with reaching out-of-school children. And because a lot of the times they are deemed sort of falling between the gaps in terms of policy and implementation, where, you know, when they're in school, it's easy to implement policies and implement initiatives in the and assessment in these cases. So I just want to ask, what is how is your organization's outreach towards out-of-school children, and what are the difficulties and opportunities do you find in that department? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Koi, for the question, and I'm glad that you could find some similarities and points of tangible connection. So, as well, I can see in the chat, Dr. Mahmoud Salama is thanking Said for his amazing presentation. Little question regarding the timeline of generalizing the result in all schools. So, like he's asking about scaling up, how this could be taken forward for the scale up, and how the process of engagement to this assessment or identify at the school, what is the organization provide them for the identify. So I could not understand the Dr. Mahmoud said, oh, sorry, I jumped it to Antonio's question. So Mahmoud Salama is asking about the timeline of generalizing the results in all schools. Will it be via your institution only, or Ministry of Education will give a hand with that? So he's asking about the scalability and scaling up, and as well the relationship and roles and responsibilities between IIED and the government. And also from Antonio from Timor-Leste has a question about what is the mechanizing of assessment, how the process of engagement to this assessment or identify at the school, what is the organization provide them to identify. So now I think we would be giving the floor to Sayyid Ahmad for the reflection and comments and response to the questions. Please, dear.
Thank you so much. A lot of questions. I'll try to be brief and mindful of time. So first of all, I'm really glad. I love talking to the group who are equally or more enthusiastic. So the depth of the question tells me that you are already in a lot of passionately in the whole journey that we are trying to be. So thank you for that. I'm just going to combine some of the questions for the time being. So the assessment that we have been doing, so it's a citizen-led assessment. So which means we currently we partner with government where it is needed. But for instance, in our assessment, we needed to make it a nationally representative, which means the Bureau of Statistics will help us to get a nationally representative sample size and also identifying the random households. But we do not do it with the government. Similar way, the first question, we also do not participate with the PISA. Bangladesh also is not doing the PISA at this moment. There are political tension about joining a initiative that compares countries, and also particularly with richer countries where we might find that this may not be comparable for everyone. I think so. That was some of the discussions that I have heard. But for IID, we as part of different global forums, we present our data as with PISA. IID is also a member of the Network on Education Coalition Monitoring NECMAP that is based on Bangkok. Again, IID and PISA and PAL Network we present. But the core concept of this was, one, someone said already that what happens to the out of children, out of school children. So we talked about SDG that leave no children behind. In the MDG, we said that, okay, so in the MDG goal, we need to make sure that all the enrollment should be there. But even during COVID, we have said that there was a large dropout. So if we now do the assessment, which is school-based, institution-based, be it PISA, be it national assessment the government does, we feel that will not include all the children who are left behind. So that's why we do it household-based. However, we do not say that this is the correct way of doing it. The other is not. We follow the Copenhagen framework that outline how citizen-led data and government data, so both citizen-generated data and government-generated data can coexist and play a very complementary role. So we say when PISA happens, countries that are doing in Bangladesh, National Student Assessment, NSA happens, should be read alongside the data that we are also providing. And we also know that when we get the data, because it's again, we are the ICANN we have done in 13 countries, right? This time. IID already have also started the socio-emotional skill assessment that we will incorporate in the coming years. And we do that as a global assessment as well. So that is comparable that at least 13 countries can now compare, which is PAL Network have done. But the other issue is that when we are actually also doing the learning PAL event, that might be the intervention, how we assess it, I should give a background that is also our journey as part of a global journey. This is another interesting example that came from India. They call it this teaching at the right level, TARL, So what we are doing is basically a Bangladesh adaptation of the TARL, teaching at the right level. Teaching at the right level currently even is being scaled up different part, even in Africa, 5-country government is actually perhaps taking a bigger initiative to do that, to scale up. And we always feel, in case of the scale up question, that end of the day, government will have to do the scale up. See, civil society, we cannot. So we come up with an idea, it's a proof of concept, and there are 2 types of assessment. We are assessing to see the impact, but the teaching of the right level, it already is proven. The JPAL, State of JPAL, they have actually written numerous studies across the countries about the effectiveness of this particular model that we are following. But we haven't finished our one yet. So hopefully within 3 months, once this round finishes, I will be able to give you the examples. And again, the other question is that when we reach out to the out of children through assessment, that's what we do. But in our initiatives, where we are actually also assessing the children in that given intervention, that's why we also reach out to the children, because we are assessing all the children. We do not care for whether they are within the school or not. And yeah, I think I have. The Bangladesh government is not being part of it, as I said. But just last week, I was in Sri Lanka. 2 of the government officials from Ministry of Primary Education joined us there, and they are setting up a meeting with us, with the ministry. So they want to take the learning. So and how government, can also learn from us. Bangladesh government is also trying to assess the SDG. And so we also can partner and, share our experience of assessing the SDG there. So there is a learning sharing experience there. And also we do work with the government, but, for the advocacy, but we remain independent civil society that we think that is important. So not, always work always with the government.
Thank you so much, Sayed Ahmed, for the wonderful presentation and the reflection. We have one more question from Ivan, but I would, for the sake of time, I would move on now to Koi's presentation and maybe keep the response to the rest of questions to the end. So now we are going to move to the presentation from Koi Dang. And here I would like to again share here the presentation. Just a minute, please. Yes. All right, so our second presentation, it's a snapshot of education resilience in Bangladesh, qualitative evidence on governance, intersectionality, and equity by Khoi Dang Vinh from Vietnam, the Mekong Development Research Institute. And here I would like to share in the chat a document, a file from Khoi that has a biography and some information and a link, but probably it's not sharing a file. Maybe I would copy and paste it into the presentation. So now, Khoi, the floor is yours, please.
All right, thank you so much, Rasha, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present at the session today. So I will quickly, for our presentation today, I'll quickly go through the GP KIX Education System Resilience Observatory. I know that previously the MENA region has also participated in the event and talked about their findings, and we also work closely with them on a consistent basis to share our findings across the MENA region and South and Southeast Asia. And then after that, we will talk more about a sort of snapshot of resilience in Bangladesh, pulled mostly from the sort of qualitative data that we have collected in the process of conducting our research. So to quickly introduce our research project, the title name is Bouncing Back and Beyond, Understanding and Building Education Systems Resilience in South and Southeast Asia. It is currently a joint initiative between the GPE and the International Development Research Center. So MDRI, which is currently based in Vietnam, is acting as the sort of the observatory for the entire South and Southeast Asia region. We currently work or conducted research across all 14 countries, GPE partner countries, with Bangladesh being one of them. So there are 7 countries in South Asia and 7 countries in Southeast Asia. Across the research, our main objectives is to generate a landscape of knowledge and evidence on education systems resilience, awareness, and preparedness across all of these 14 countries, looking more specifically into equity and intersectionality across these systems of resilience. Our second objective is to look at what is called foresight, which is identifying future disruptions, its possible effects, as well as how different communities and actors are currently anticipating these future disruptions. And finally, all of these insights are used to produce recommendations to build a sustainable and inclusive education system that caters to both policymakers as well as grassroots stakeholders. So in terms of our research methodology, it is a sequential and mixed method research. So we have an element of quantitative data, which is also almost finished. We're like 99% done with our data collection, as well as qualitative data collection. So in terms of quantitative, we are currently conducting 4,000 surveys with teachers from 10 countries, so 400 teachers per country across all different education levels, with Bangladesh being one of them. And in terms of our qualitative data, we conducted more than 150 interviews with different stakeholders in all 14 countries. The numbers vary, but our participants range from different social and ecological levels of the education system, sometimes even beyond the education system. So not only do we interview education officials, but we also interview officials in other fields that might be related to education resilience, such as health, child affairs, infrastructure, disaster management, and other fields as well. In addition to that, we also interview community leaders and organizations who are actively implementing a lot of the policies related to resilience, and finally representatives from NGOs and INGOs who has a more landscape view of the situation in these countries. Specifically for this presentation, I want to focus on the qualitative interviews in Bangladesh, where we conducted 15 interviews with 10 education officials across all the different divisions and districts and upazila levels in the 3 regions of Sylhet, Sugarmanch, and Sakira. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the names. It's a bit difficult for me to also manage these. We also interview 4 officials in non-education institutions, mostly in child affairs, human rights, and social affairs, as well as 1 Bangladesh-based NGO. So the way that we'll present this is mostly some lessons or some key themes that we have gathered throughout our process of analyzing the data related to resilience in Bangladesh. So firstly, to just have an overview of the sort of disruptions that are affecting the country, we noted that the majority of respondents talked a lot about climate disruptions and ecological disruptions affecting different regions of Bangladesh, some more than others. But the key theme that we want to highlight is the sort of compounding nature of climate, economic, and social disruptions that compound on education system rather than occurring in isolation. A highlight that is featured a lot in the interviews is the wetland communities in northeast Bangladesh, who face not only seasonal flash floods, but also compounded with geographic isolation from these flash floods, as well as limited economic opportunities and access to education and healthcare. And over time, as these disruptions occur every year, it creates a lot of compounding and exacerbating consequences for these communities. In terms of intersectionality, there is a lot of elements in terms of disability, poverty, and gender being mentioned as frequent vulnerabilities that might exacerbate the effects of these disruptions on education systems. So a lot of the work, I think, in Bangladesh in terms of resilience has also been focused on challenges that might be associated with the direct impacts of right. Sorry. I can't seem to continue with this. Oh, there we go. One thing that is that we want to highlight as well is something that's been consistently mentioned, which is economic hardships and the subsequent migration for better opportunities that happens a lot in in the country. And this is a specific mechanism that we see across all regions in South and Southeast Asia. But we want to highlight it here is that it certainly exacerbate disruptions or the impacts of it, and in specifically in declining education outcomes such as dropout rates and the increased rates of out of school children. So the effects of it is varied. Our initial assumption is that it will mostly affect uh, children, but then you see different effects in different local communities. So where there are communities where mothers migrate for better jobs, the children are left without caregivers, and that has a specific impact on development trajectories. And then in other cases where young boys and young men are moving outwards to find better opportunities, it creates very specific patterns in schools where classrooms outnumber boys a lot. Not that this is a conclusion on, the inherent disadvantages of one gender group or another, but to sort of highlight that there is a layered and very complex problem all within the larger umbrella of economic hardships. So, yes. Um, Moving on to some, I think, lessons or some larger themes that we identified throughout our research is number one, durable resilience design requires an integration of community learning and experience. So a large part of our research is to look at, the learning process of communities and how they sort of how these learning process is adapted over time and whether they get integrated into the larger policy design and things like that. So we have seen a lot of learning happen in Bangladesh in terms of, learning from past disruptions to then build better capacities, such as direct experiences with seasonal flooding led to direct capacity addition to school buildings to act as flood shelters, or an adaptation from the COVID era disruption response related to remote learning now becomes a more blended education framework to differentiate different school levels and student groups. One thing in terms of equitable resilience is looking at adolescent girls not only as a education stakeholder, but also as a civil protection stakeholder, especially related to issues such as child marriage, and there are impeded access to education, especially for girls as well. So I want to highlight one story, and I think perhaps this is much related to Said's presentation as well, is the to recognize community resilience within policy design and to encourage uptake in terms of community initiatives. So one story that came out that I think is worth noting is this boat transport scheme that happens a lot in wetland communities. So it is a locally designed and implemented initiatives in the wetland regions to transport students and volunteer teachers in flooded seasons. It was designed well in local context, but then the scale-up efforts were sort of rejected due to no dedicated funds. So now the project itself sort of exists as a self-organization effort of what we consider an informal community layer. So where resilience and disruptions affects the governance of schools, the community itself act as a very key group in maintaining safety and maintaining education outcomes for a lot of children in the community itself. And finally, in terms of equitable resilience design, I think one of the key things that we want to highlight is that in Bangladesh that we have a lot of stories about building resilience that situates within an environment that allows students to safely access education rather than just recognizing these different student groups that exist and their vulnerabilities, but now also designing responses that are adapted to the local context as well as adapted to the specific barriers and needs of different student groups. So one of the things that came up a lot are nutrition programs in Bangladesh, where in some regions it is almost a universal coverage of nutrition, of feeding of school meals for children. In regions where malnutrition is one of the biggest barriers to learning access, and not only in terms of nutrition itself, but also in terms of economic opportunities, where whether families could feed themselves, children are more likely to go to school and access education. One of the more endemic issues to Bangladesh is it's a matter of early marriage, and that is also being addressed across different key regions in Bangladesh here. So there are cases where education stipends for girls extended beyond the age of 18 so that they can continue the education, or at least motivated to continue the education for as long as possible, and to sort of work around the issue of early marriage. And lastly, we want to highlight low-cost design in resilience as a way to reach very low resource areas, because oftentimes these areas are the ones that need the most intervention and it needs the most help, but often resilience design don't really get to them. So highlighting these stories, and especially in terms of remote learning and alternative teaching, is a key way to reach the most needed communities in the country. So I want to end this with a few sort of takeaways. It's already mentioned across this presentation, but resilience strategies, some of our conclusions are that resilience strategies require us to address underlying inequities and inequalities in combination with direct education interventions, consistent communication between communities and government stakeholders is also very important to build a durable and sustainable resilience strategy, and genuine uptake in communities is also very important. And also in terms of vulnerabilities and equitable design, I think moving beyond recognizing different vulnerable student groups and designing resilience now to match their local context is very important. And that's how we move from simply education recovery towards transformation. So yes, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I think I went a little bit over time, but we have a lot of upcoming sort of knowledge sharing sessions, and our team is now currently in the process of producing a lot of the outputs in terms of our research. So we hope that you follow us throughout the process, and hopefully we'll see you in further sessions where we get to present further findings and even South Asia level findings as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Koi, for the wonderful presentation. I've enjoyed, and it's really good to learn more about building resilience. I mean, it's my first time, honestly, to hear about building resilience, which is something interesting, and how low-cost buildings can really contribute to efficiency and spreading education services in remote areas and in different parts of the country. Thank you so much. We would now open the floor. I have received some comments and some questions in the chat. Let me share them first. And so there was a question from Ivan to the presentation of the Sayed about the instruments for assessing children's literacy and numeracy, and whether there is a consideration for students with disabilities. So maybe it would be good that Sayed would respond to that now. And also there has been Sayed already has responded in the chat. Thank you so much. Another all right, from Zulfikar Ali, about who is a foundational learning specialist in Sindh in Pakistan. And it's beautiful is to people that get connected and learn about the good practices here and there. And but I think Pakistan is also one of the countries, Koi, that the observatory is working on the education resilience. And maybe next session we can talk about Pakistan, and then include the system resilience, education system resilience in Pakistan. And maybe Zulfikar can also present from his own perspective foundational learning outcomes in Sindh. So, okay, there has been similarities, and I think Sayed has connected already and has responded. with him. So thank you so much. Yeah, we if presenters can agree to share the presentations. So if you can share the presentation, and I then we would send it to the participants by email with the link. So it's very good. All right. Yeah, Syed is also adding a very interesting point on child marriage. We saw a similar pattern in IID, so maybe, and a link here, we discussed this here in this link, so maybe you can have more access to the link and information provided by Syed. My question, how should an education resilience framework address harmful coping strategies such as child marriage and that families may themselves perceive as protection? So from this is really very good angle to look at things, because one thing that the family look at as protection, like marriage, and it would require a cultural awareness and cultural change and so on. So maybe you can respond to Said's question here. And also from Samud, would you share the institutional LinkedIn page, if there is a LinkedIn page that they can explore more? And yeah, the site as well has commented that a very insightful presentation, especially in showing that resilience is not only about systems absorbing shocks, but also recognizing and building on the adaptive capacity already present in communities. Yeah, thank you so much. So now we would hear from Sumera. Sumera is the national coordinator in Bangladesh. So, Sumera, the floor is yours, please, before we give the floor to Koi and Syed to comment, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. As usual, always, it's a wonderful experience to be here in the Knowledge Cafe. Thank you, Rasha. Thank you, the presenters. Both of the presentations were wonderful. So I was thinking about in Bangladesh, the different resilience strategies. And also, I was thinking the one that Syed Bhai presented, in some of the aspects that can also be, those strategies can also be used for other situations where we need the resilience. So there are different strategies that are actually practiced or in different contexts. Some are through different local NGOs. Some are local initiatives like the boat school. We have heard about that. There were a lot of research on that, but ultimately many of these resilience strategies were not sustainable, and those were gone. So I think how we can make it sustainable, at least though in those local contexts where that is needed, we need actually, it is very important to involve government and um, make it, even though it cannot, many of the initiatives we cannot make it in a large scale sometimes because it's very contextual. Like in Bangladesh, that part was based on Howard, where they're in seasonal, because of seasonal rain, there are wetland and flood. At least at those areas, with government's help, actually we can do that. I think what we can do is that we need to see how we can make those findings and the initiatives more visible, and to the policymakers, that is also very important. Another thing I was thinking, when Said Bhai was talking about the negative coping mechanism, I think it is really important that because of this research and resilience strategies, when we are searching, then we find all these things, like there are child marriage, child labor. Um, uh, for the many of the boys, there were seasonal child labor because of the harvesting time and other things. That's why also boys drop out. So when we know about this, then I think we also need to have mechanism to sort those out locally, like storytelling and like puppet show and other ways to show these research based findings, because we know research shows that there are more negative consequences of that. But if we tell them in a research findings way, then it can be very difficult for them to understand. But based on the context and the audience, I think we need to have different approach of letting them know about the negative effects of those strategies. So we can also inbuilt those strategies within the resilience, sustainable resilience strategies, I think. That was from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samara, for your reflection. And I agree with you, sustainability of resilience strategy is very important. And the different attractive way in approaching community for cultural change is always good to consider. And we would hear more from Sayed and Koy on this afterwards. Now, we would like to hear from Atif Ahmed. Please, Dr. Atif.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Rasha and all. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just when Kowi is presenting his presentation. What attracted me to his presentation actually is the research questions about the malnutrition. And what I mean is the impact of malnutrition on learning. And because I've had the chance to work on this kind of research in Egypt, so I'm curious about this kind of research and how it had a big impact on children's learning. Yeah. So my question is, to what extent do malnutrition and what we call it poor health effect on children's learning outcomes, particularly the literacy and numeracy in Bangladesh, considering that the dominance of the malnutrition among Bangladeshi children, including stunting and underweight. So what proportion of children is affected? And how do these nutritional and health challenges influence children's school attendance, educational attainment, and also the ability to acquire foundational reading and mathematics skills? One more question, sorry for that, is do schools in Bangladesh provide meals to the children? I mean school meals to children here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atif. And the school meals is always a challenge in our country. So thank you for bringing this up. Mr. Bashir? Dr. Bashir, please go ahead.
نعم شكرا.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for those very important presentations. And I do agree with Ms. Samra concerning how to improve the skills of decision makers, stakeholders, as well as active entities in the education. We do have the manual, a manual that was published by UNESCO, the IAP of UNESCO. It is a manual that can be used whenever we have an emergency. And it takes into consideration the climate disruptions, because climate and emergencies are not always, or crises and emergencies are not always related to conflicts, the natural disasters, etc. We do have a lot of elements in there. So it is a manual that explains how we can guarantee the right to access to education in emergency settings. It is an international manual that was promoted by the Institution for Higher Education. And I do have a question in that regard. do we have a certain coalition or a certain entity encompassing all the countries that were mentioned by Professor Deng, the 14 countries? Are they under a certain coalition, an education coalition, in order to build educational systems guaranteeing a quality education and guaranteeing the sustainability and resilience of education? We have talked a lot today about sustainability and resilience. This is very important. And as Samra mentioned, the experiences should be scaled up, and should it be remain in silos in some countries. It is very important to think about scaling up those very useful initiatives, because we might have a lot of similarities between countries, and countries do need sustainable solutions for education. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rasha. Thank you so much.
And now I will give the floor to our speakers, Mr. Saeed Ahmed, for his own reflections. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So first of all, when we did one resilient study in Bangladesh, based on that we shared one op-ed in the link here that as you can see, there are a lot of similarities. But I think Koidong's presentation gives the depth of the reasons what's happening there. We also have seen there is a different types of shock, when you try to see that, okay, so it's resilience to what? So there are different types, and sometimes some we have seen that in that area, sometimes it has been simply during the the cultivation season, they use the school field to dry the paddy. So, and then the school, it would be difficult for use the school. So there are different way which is preventable. There are ones that's not preventable. So different ways and layers of shocks that we see. But one of the things that came up again and again, and I think during the COVID, we also have learned, without community intervention, none of the resilience initiative will work. The community interaction is needed, and by that I do not mean that put the burden on the community. I mean government initiative that includes community as the co-designer and also as the partner. So I think that's important. I just wanted to share one thing. One of the participants asked here about the Bangladesh literacy rate. So, okay, Bangladesh originally used to do the literacy rate in government own way, where they would report around 3/4 of the population is literate. Excuse me. Raja did say that, it's a cafe and we should actually stay hydrated, but I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But the presentations are so good, I just lost track of the that. However, when we see Bangladesh government, when it started assessing the foundational literacy, grade 3 and grade 5, then they realized 50% of the children are not on track. So which means the literacy that they say the 3/4 is actually not there. In Bangladesh, we do have chronic malnutrition, but at the current stage, I think stunting, probably around 24% of the children suffer from stunting. But we have also seen that the correlation between midday meal and children going to the school, and I think that also came with Koidong's, and Sumera's discussion as well. But yeah, I like the presentation from Koidong, and also the questions that came up. I would say it gave us more insights and more questions to dig through. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear. And now we will move to Koi.
Yes, thank you. So I think before I go into the specific questions that were addressed with my presentation, I think I want to make I guess a general response to in terms of where our research is. And our research, at least the observatory initiative, which not only exists in South Asia and Southeast Asia, but also in the MENA region, in Europe, in Latin America, and in the Pacific, is now creating a sort of global database for education resilience. So we are essentially mapping the landscape of what resilience is and what it looks like and how it is defined and what it is addressing across these different regions. And in a sense, and also to, I suppose, answer Dr. Bashir's question, is that in that sense, we technically act as an education coalition in that sense of at least in our project to look at build and share knowledge in terms of, what are the things that affects us and, what are the different regions doing about this issue. And between these observatories, we also meet on a bi-monthly basis to talk about our research and the things that are happening in our regions. And a lot of interesting conversations can come from that. I think at large, GPE is also, and the EMAP Hub itself is also doing a lot of great work in terms of connecting a lot of these education resilience efforts across the different countries. And I had a chance to go through the EMAP Hub's blogs and the work that we have been doing in the other regions, and I find it to be quite, I think, fruitful in the way that we are connecting a lot of the initiatives together. To talk more specifically about the issues that are affecting and the sort of compounding nature of these issues in Bangladesh. First of all, thank you, Saeed, for the resources that you shared with in regards to child marriage. I had a chance to briefly skim through it while we were having a conversation, and I think like you mentioned, and even in the article itself, I think a lot of it has to do with economic opportunities, and that seems to be the poverty seems to be the underlying matter in the case of early marriage. In terms of our research, I think again we haven't gone to the phase of conducting interventions or implementing anything in terms of those addressing those issues. But what we're doing in our research is I hadn't had time to mention this in my presentation, but for our survey, one of the sort of methodologies and our approaches to the survey is to look at the KAP of resilience, so knowledge, attitude, and practice of resilience. So, in relation to a particular disruption or a particular issue, how does a respondent, and in this case teachers, have these knowledge and attitudes and practice related to these issues and resilience practices? So and the reason why we address we engage with teachers is because we find them to be the sort of locus between parents and children, as well as the sort of policy mandates and the top-down governance level. So they sit at the center of everything, and I think it's the best sort of target respondents to engage with. So by engaging with their knowledge base, their attitudes towards certain social norms, and their attitudes towards cases like child marriage, and what is being done or what is currently done based on these knowledge and attitudes, we can, at least in our case, map a sort of trajectory of how these practices and how these trends or these norms come to be. And in that case, and as we go further into data analysis and going further into producing outputs, we will look at are there gaps in those KAPs that we can look at to address in terms of interventions, and say, okay, there are these certain gaps in understanding, or these certain gaps in attitudes and norms and things like that, so that we can further tackle. And to also connect it to Dr. Samera's points too is that there definitely needs to be a thread that connects these community levels and these individual knowledge attitudes and practices towards a larger policy design, and the constant sort of dialogue and communication, not only between the different regions and but also not only horizontally but also vertically between the different government levels and the local level as well. Yes. Let me see if I'm missing anything. Yes. So, Dr. Ataf's question on malnutrition. So, I think I want to answer this in the sense because in the social sense, I want to respond to this question related to malnutrition and less so in the sense of like the pedagogical consequences of malnutrition, I suppose. I think that's where our research is being framed. That we're looking at the sort of underlying factor of malnutrition as a larger issue of a lack of basic rights and at least when children or when families they lack food and they lack a sustainable livelihood. It's difficult to worry about something that is, I suppose, in a lot of people's attitudes and knowledge, a sort of secondary requirement for survival, which is education. So we're looking at this in terms of, how do we provide basic or basic necessities for children, and that comes back to also the question of poverty and the question of the lack of economic opportunities and things like that. So I think that's where our research is being framed. One thing that we're addressing in our survey as well is to just try to map out what sort of outcomes is being associated with these disruptions. So when there are issues like malnutrition, what sort of outcomes are being reported? Not so much trying to explain the connection between those two, but to at least see, okay, here's at least there is a sort of correlation, at least between these specific learning outcomes like attendance or dropouts or lower grades associated with these specific disruptions like malnutrition or things like flash floods or diseases and such. So yes, I hope that addresses everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much, very dear friends, Said Ahmed and Koidang, for your wonderful contribution today. And the questions will never stop, by the way. But it's this presentation that challenges the mind, and people would keep reflecting. For all the participants of today, you have the links to IIED, and you have the link as well to the blog post and to the LinkedIn page for our site for the MDRI Research Institute. So please feel free to send them emails, communicate further with them, provide them with the helpful resources, and as well as never be shy to ask for help and to learn from their own experience further. So I would give the floor now to Professor Sumaira Ahsan to reflect on, from Bangladesh perspective, to reflect on today's session, discussions and questions before we close. And then I would give the floor to Yasmina Osama for the QR codes and the surveys and the links. So Professor Sumaira, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Rasha, for giving me the opportunity. First of all, I think I have learned a lot from both of the presentations. So as it is about Bangladesh, the context is similar. The thing in Bangladesh is that we have a huge system of education. So we have a lot of learners in primary and secondary education and in higher education and teachers. So, and there are a lot of issues, and these are all layered and also like interconnecting. So, one reinforce the another one. So it's very difficult to solve problem overall with one policy or one specific research. So what I think is that the insight I gained from both of the presentation is that the solutions should come from local um, resources, and like Said Bhai was picking that point up, that it it, it it's not that it needs to be very expensive or something very new. The local knowledge resource that we can use to build the resilience, and also we need to keep the resources during the COVID time, built a lot of resources for those time, but we need to keep those alive so that when we need, then we can also use that again. And I think we need to build, the government need to take initiatives so that these initiatives are not lost. In local level, they, if they can support those very good initiatives, and also I would say if they can kind of give prizes for those good initiatives and can keep alive, then others will be really active and motivated to bring out different types of initiatives and local initiatives for resilience, so that we can solve those problems. And and also we need to, like for example, this research, we there are two presentations in one context, and we are so much we can link. So I think I always feel that to make any policy decision or even local decisions, we need to have different research, and we need to have a platform where we can actually communicate and bring those together to get insight. It's not only that there are meta-analysis or bigger kind of data, big data set, but when we have different evidence, then it makes it rich. So uh, we need to have those platforms, and KIX EMAP Hub is a part of that. I'm very glad to be a part of that. Thank you very much. So I will conclude here.
Yay! Thank you so much. Now, yeah, I agree with you that the knowledge exchange platform is very important for sharing information, and that it's always good to learn from each other and to share success stories, and even to share worries, by the way, so that we can work together and have a mitigation strategies for anything that might be of a threat to our education systems. So, well, that brings us to the end of today. But before we close, I would give the floor now to my dear colleague Yasmina Osama to share some important QR code and links with you. And we are very serious about the feedback that you provide us. So we take it seriously, and we try always to improve our activities and our approaches, and to mobilize more speakers, wonderful speakers like yourself. So Yasmina, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rasha. Can you see the QR code? I have just screened it now.
So that's the post session survey. So if you can use your cell phone and then scan the QR code and respond to the survey, it wouldn't take like a couple of minutes to let us know more about how do you find today's session and the Knowledge Cafe as an activity. And maybe today we've been inspired that Pakistan could be the next Knowledge Cafe, having a system resilience, know about foundational learning in Pakistan from the Sindh experience. And so we will try to use the information from today to bring more information about Pakistan next time. And maybe also Tunisia. We have received the request from Tunisia. Thank you so much, Dalia, and everyone. And it has been a real pleasure being with you today. I wait curiously for 3 months for this session to come. So I'm one of the biggest fans of this session. Knowledge Cafe. Thank you again, Said Ahmed and Koi Dang, for your wonderful contribution. And thanks for the audience for the wonderful questions and reflections and comments.